Hello. I thought I would share some good news. I had my hyperparathyroidectomy. I've had one of my parathyroids removed, and I've got the surgeon's report here. It's kind of interesting, I think, anyway. Let's see. It is, what's I going to say? My memory has still not come back. Still a little fuzzy. I had the surgery done on the 20th of July. And it is now, what day is this? It's the 30th. It's the 31st. So it's about 10 days. 10 days after surgery. Yeah, I had pretty serious situation. The surgeon said that the parathyroid gland, that was the problem. It had an adenoma. It was swollen, and it had swollen so much that it was starting to press on my vocal cords, and that between that and the scar tissue, here it is, it got to be 2.5 centimeters long, 1.8 centimeters wide, and 1.2 centimeters deep. And it weighed 2,566 milligrams. So it was a big sucker. They said that had it been much bigger, it would have been almost impossible to remove without damaging my vocal cords. So as you can hear, my vocal cords are still okay. So Dr. Sina Nasri did a good job, considering what he had to deal with. Yeah, it says here that they had to dissect the gland away from the vocal cords and away from the laryngeal nerve. The laryngeal nerve where it enters into the larynx, and apparently it lays right next to your thyroid, and this parathyroid has swollen to the point where it was actually trying to attach itself to this nerve. So he had to very carefully cut it away from the nerve and not cut the nerve. It's amazing what they can do. Just, it's a miracle. It really is. Through this little tiny incision that you see here in my neck, it was like we said, it was like 3 centimeters long, 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters long. Very small. They did all of this work, and they put a tube down my throat, for the air and for the anesthesia. And what I'm dealing with now, even 10 days after surgery, I dealt with this in the post-op room and overnight. I stayed overnight in the hospital. And what I've dealt with then, and what I've dealt with since then, is coughing up phlegm and snot, basically. It started out being pretty good sized chunks of yellow stuff, but they gave me the clindamycin, I think it was, antibiotic, and I took that pre-op and post-op until it was gone. So the snot now is more clear. It's not yellow as much as it used to be, but it still happens. Where right now I'm okay, but usually in the mornings when I first get up is when it's the worst, and I'll cough and cough and cough up these little bits of stuff. And I'm using the tube, and when I was in the hospital overnight, almost every half hour or so, I was even almost all night. I'm not sure I slept at all. I might have slept maybe a couple of hours. I had to go to the bathroom so much too, of course, because you're on an IV and it's pumping all this stuff into you, pain medicine and electrolytes and everything. so you have to pee a lot in that case, and I still do. Um, but I would drink because my throat was dry. I would drink water and apple juice and stuff, and I ate some of what they gave me on the tray, mostly just the soft stuff, the rice that was in a dish, that was in the supper dish, and things like that, pudding, applesauce, any of the solid things they gave me. They gave me this chicken dinner. My throat hurt so much I didn't even want to mess with it. But they gave me this machine, and let me pause this and see if I can go get it for you. Okay, I'm back. That's about the limit of my editing know-how, is how to pause a video, do what I need to do, you come back and unpause it. But this is the thing that's been my little buddy, my little friend, for the last 10 days. I've been breathing through this thing. It looks like something you would blow into, but actually you suck through it. You breathe in through this gadget. And this tube comes off so you can clean it. I've done the best I can do to keep it clean with peroxide and hydrogen peroxide and alcohol, running some in there, swishing it around, then rinsing it out, and then swirling it around, trying to keep the thing clean. So the last thing I want is to give myself an infection, from this thing. I'm trying to prevent an infection, and it snaps on like that. And then what you do is you breathe in through this little tube here, like this. And when you breathe out, the little blue, it's like a valve. It has a gasket in there. It drops back down again. And that's its purpose. It's supposed to make you cough, so you'll cough up the gunk that's trying to collect in your lungs. Ever since I've had this surgery, I've had this fluid trying to accumulate, this stuff running down my throat constantly. So I blow my nose and I try to cough it up. Oh. This little thing here is your little goal. They tested me out to see how high I could get it without struggling, and that's where they set it at. So it's at 3,000 milliliters of air. So I'm basically able to breathe in 3,000 milliliters of air before my lungs are at full capacity and I can't do anymore. The nurse said that was really good. But that's, I think she was expecting me to start a lot lower on this thing than I did. But fortunately I have very healthy lungs. I've never smoked. And I drink very, very seldom and only small amounts. Never been drunk in my life, in fact. So I've got pretty good lungs. And I used to be in a choir in high school and then in church a lot. So I've learned how to breathe through my diaphragm. I've got a pretty strong diaphragm from doing all that singing, and I still sing sometimes for fun. So that diaphragm muscle is pretty strong. But yeah, that's been my fun for the last 10 days. I've been trying to cough that stuff up, keep that from accumulating in my lungs. Because if enough of that stuff accumulates in your lungs, guess what you've got? You've got pneumonia. And one of the main reasons why people catch pneumonia in the hospital is because they don't do enough of that exercise that they're supposed to. Or they don't keep them on the ventilator long enough if they're physically unable to do the thing. So far I've managed to keep pneumonia at bay, but there have been some days where I've not felt well, where I've really coughed every time I breathed. But earlier I was outside doing some garden work, working on my pond, and there's a couple times I had to stop, take a break from cleaning the pond and from repotting the plants. There's some plants in the pond on these little shelves. It has a hard plastic lined pond, and I took them out of their original pots. That's just the pots they bought them from the store. They just plunked them in the water, and they've been going downhill the last couple of months. That was since we've had 2 of the months since we've had the house, half the summer. I thought at first it was from the heat, but I got to thinking, maybe they're root bound. Maybe they're, the roots can't do what they need to do anymore. So I went and got these baskets, little square things. They're like 10 inches across and 6 inches deep or something. and you take your plants and you wash the excess dirt and clay and things out of them and put them in these baskets, you know, because really all the soil does, you know, is keep the roots from drying out and provide nutrients. Well, there's plenty of nutrients in the water. It's probably too many nutrients, but I have a bunch of little tiny fish, about that big, little goldfish in the pond. I think we put something like 30 of them in there. Start with 25. I think we've lost maybe 10 of them over time, but the most of them are still there, and they've gotten they're about twice the size they were when we bought them. Anyway, getting off the subject, I tend to do that. Squirrel, you know. But so in that respect, it's a success because I have enough energy to do things like that. And at first, the first few days, I barely had enough energy to get out of bed and put on a baseball shirt like this, and you know, and do my breathing exercises and try to eat just light, simple, small amounts of food, soft things. I've been gradually getting braver and eating, you know, a little bit gradually chunkier stuff. I'm still trying to avoid having a lot of calcium in the food I eat right now. They said, was it 2 weeks before the surgery, I need to double up my efforts to try not to have too much calcium in my food. And I've been doing that for 4 years. 4 years I've been limiting my diet of calcium and taking vitamin D. It's 1,000 units I use of vitamin D a day. Now I'm still taking those vitamin Ds. I'm also taking, was it C, zinc, B12 or something like that, and something else, and my vitamin D still, because I was starting to get sores in my mouth after I got home, and I realized it's because I was, you know, I was insufficient in vitamin C and probably some other vitamins. So I took those. I'm not allowed to take my multivitamins I have been taking for the past 4 years, because they said that for 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after, I need to try to avoid eating a lot of things that have vitamin E or fish oil in them. It causes problems with some of the medication that they were giving me during the operation and after. You know, so I did that. So I'm taking individual vitamins. It's like this whole pile of bottles now. I feel like I look like an old man now. I've been feeling like an old man for the past 4 years. You know, I was only, what, 45, 46 when this started. I'm 50 now. This is my 50th birthday this year, which I celebrated in New Zealand and Australia. That's a whole other topic for a whole other video. You can check out my Facebook page. It's John Enfield. Let's look up John Enfield, JOHNENFIELD on Facebook, and you'll find me on there. My page is public. You can see all the pictures I've been taking of our trip to Australia and New Zealand. We spent a week in New Zealand, and we saw all the Lord of the Rings stuff on the North Island. We didn't have time to make it to the South Island. We went to the North Island. We landed at Auckland, and then we took a train down to Wellington. So we almost went from the top, almost the very top of the North Island, down to the south tip of the North Island. So that was quite a trip on a train. So we got to look out the windows, the huge windows of this train, and eat meals on the train. And there was a car, observation deck car. You could stand kind of outside and look out through these windows with little bars on them, and get the air blowing in on you. I think we were pretty much right behind the engine, so you could hear that engine doing its thing. It was quite an experience of a lifetime. Hopefully I'll get to go back someday, because we went to Hobbiton, which is the place where they filmed. It's in Mata, New Zealand, kind of in the southern middle of the country, of the island of the country. What was it? They called the Watoro. I know I still can't pronounce all the Maori names place names they have over there. It's funny. You got all these place names that are either British or German or Welsh or something, and then the next day went to all these Maori kind of sort of native names for other place names as well. So the town we were in was Mata, and that's where they filmed Hobbiton and Bag End, you know, the home of Bilbo and Frodo and all those things in the Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit movies. Well, they've set that up so that it's more or less permanent now, and you can buy. I think it's like $100, $200, somewhere between the two per person, but it's worth it because the tour we took was because we went there for we were there almost all day, and then or half at least the entire afternoon for sure, and the evening, and we had supper in the Green Dragon Inn. Can you imagine? You know, someone like me who's read the books, read all of Tolkien's books, the Silmarillion, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, all of those books multiple times over the past 30 years or more, 35 years. So it was just amazing. If you ever get the chance, you know, to go to New Zealand, you gotta go there. It's really something else. And then we spent 2 days there in Matamata and 2 days in Wellington. Down in Wellington, they have in a part of town on the south end of town by a bay. I can't remember the name of the bay now, but there's this big bay down there, beautiful place, and the whole town. And speaking of Lord of the Rings, Wellington looks a little bit like Gondor, you know, the city on the hill with the big castle on top. It doesn't have a big castle on top, but it has the entire town is built on these huge the sides of these huge mountains, these huge hills, and they're forested hills. And parts of the hills are covered in houses and buildings, and all these streets are winding all over the place, and some of the streets are really steep. You can barely walk up them unless you're really healthy, you know, really in good shape. There were some of the places we thought about going to were like, no, we're not in shape for this. We're in our late 40s, and I got my hyperparathyroidism issue going on. I didn't have a lot of energy, so I'm glad that we were able to stay in each of these towns for more than for at least a couple of days, because I was just, after a day of sightseeing, I was just exhausted, and I was just zonked out. But I did it. I knew I would love to do it, and I did. Anyway, in Wellington, in this part of town called, darn it, my memory is still not what it should be. It's getting there. It's getting better than it was. Still not what it should be. I've written all this stuff down, otherwise I wouldn't be able to remember it, you know. And I took almost 2,000 pictures. I've looked at all of them multiple times. Made a little book, too, on a website called Snapfish. And it's a wonderful book. And I like it anyway. My wife likes it. We made this little memento, you know, of our trip. It's about $50, but totally worth it. And anyway, down there in Wellington, there's a part of town called Miramar, and Miramar is this beautiful little kind of quaint neighborhood. It's mostly houses and schools and a few little shops. But right smack dab in the middle of this, they built the Weta Workshop, and this already existed before the Lord of the Rings movies were made. And I think it's one of the reasons why Sir Peter Jackson decided to film there, partly because he was from New Zealand, but also because he had a relationship already with this a special effects website, or special effects workshop. And of course, you can check them all out online on their website, and on the special edition, you know, the extended edition of the Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit movies. There's bits and pieces in there of what they call documentaries of how they filmed it. And you'll see the Weta Workshop, and you'll see Hobbiton. We got to see it in person, which is even better. I love those documentaries, but it's even better to see it in person. So we toured that for a day, and we wandered around Wellington for another day, you know. And then by that time, it was about time to go to Australia. So we went to Australia for 2 weeks. We spent a week in Sydney and a week in Melbourne with my wife's half uncles. Turns out that her mother, on her mom's side, has brothers, half brothers. Anyway, I'm still confused by it, but anyway, we had a wonderful time meeting them and meeting their families and going up to the Blue Mountains and to see the Three Sisters and what the closest thing Australia has to a Grand Canyon. It's not as big as the Grand Canyon, not as long, but still pretty impressive. And you should just check out my Facebook page, and you'll see all the pictures I've been posting on there. And check it out, and you're more than welcome to send me a friend request. I will accept a friend request from anyone, absolutely anyone. I love meeting people on Facebook and Twitter, it's my social life, honestly, for the most part. I mean, my wife and I, we go do things here in town in Las Vegas, but I feel most comfortable, really, chatting with people by typing. I'm more comfortable typing than I am talking. In case you can't tell, I'm not the maybe not the best oral, uh, out loud communicator. And I've tried. I took. I was in 4-H when I was a kid, you know, and I did demo talks in 4-H, and I've taken communications classes in high school and college, and I'm an introvert, and this doesn't come naturally to me. I even feel a little weird, a little nervous just talking to my little webcam. Even the webcam is kind of weirding me out, making me feel a little self-conscious and nervous here. But this is, anyway, back to the subject, hyperparathyroidism. This is what remains. There's this little incision on my neck, and there's this little steri strip. And they did this amazing job of suturing it on the inside of my throat somehow. I don't know how they did this. The inside, and they said they did the stitching. They stitched me 3 times somehow to hold it all together, and I couldn't touch it, and I had to keep it clean. And I went back to the doctor after a week of being at home. We went back to the doctor and the surgeon, and he looked me over and looked down my throat and everything, and looked at his notes, and he said, "I pronounce you cured." He said, "How do you feel?" I said, "Well, I still feel achy. I still feel tired. I still feel a little itchy." All of the symptoms I told you about in what it's like to live with hyperparathyroidism parts 1 and 2 are they're still with me. They're still here, but they're very slowly, very gradually, a little bit at a time, a little each day, gradually going away. Very, very slowly. And he said that's how it goes. It could take months. In fact, they said the swelling in my neck, on this side of my neck, could take as much as 3 months to go away completely. And I have a feeling that I'm going to be coughing up snot and stuff for the next 2 months too. So I'll let you know how I feel in a couple months' time if I feel any better. But I can do things. I can clean the house. I've been cleaning. I've been kind of taking care of myself for the most part. My wife checks on me. Make sure I'm not overdoing it, not getting sick again or something, not passing out. Or there have been a few times I've felt like I might pass out, and I've had to lay down on the couch for a while and make sure I'm drinking enough water. And I've got to tell you, about 4 days after I had the surgery, and they said this might happen too, so I wasn't as shocked as I might have been. I felt numbness in my lips and my fingers and my toes. And they said, if that happens, take your calcium plus vitamin D pills that we sent you home with. Excuse me. So I did, and that happened about midnight, 2 times so far. And I took it when I felt it, and in a few hours it went away, and I felt more or less normal, as normal as I've ever been. As normal as I've been for the past 4 years. I've almost forgotten what being healthy feels like, to be honest with you. So if I ever get back to normal, it'll be a shock. But yeah, and just earlier today, after I got done working on the pond, I felt numb in my mouth and my fingers and a little bit my toes, so I took another one. And they said just take it when you need it. Don't take it all the time, because it's still going to take a while for your body to find its equilibrium, find its balance of too much calcium, not enough calcium. And there's really good videos here on YouTube about how that works and why that happens. So I won't try to explain it because my mind is still not where it should be, and I'm not a doctor. So, and I'm still wearing these shirts like this with a low collar so it doesn't rub on the incision. They say after I went to the surgeon, the best news for me was I can now take showers again, because I was doing sponge baths, like you have to do if you go camping at a primitive campsite that doesn't have any showers or bathrooms. That's pretty awful. You do that for about a week, 12 days. you're done with it. You're over it. It's terrible. Thank God for modern homes and the conveniences of indoor plumbing, you know, and showers. I love my showers. I'm so glad to have them back. Anyway, I think this video's gone on long enough. I just want to let you know how I'm doing. And like I say, I'm not out of the woods yet. There's a slight chance. They said there's a 90% success rate with my kind of surgery I've had. He says it's one of the highest success rates in all of surgery, which is good to know. But that still means there's about a 10% chance that one of my remaining 3 or 4 or 5 parathyroids. Sometimes most people have 4. It's possible to have as many as 6. However many are remain, they know that I still have 3 for sure, if they check for them. There's a chance one of those other 3 might decide to swell up, and I'll be starting from square one again. And they say in the videos I've watched, and my surgeon and my endocrinologist, Dr. Wong, Melton Wong, they've been very straightforward with me about this whole process from day one. You know, these are the risks. This is what might work and it might not work. These are the things that could happen afterwards. They told me about all the side effects that are possible. You know, they haven't tried to sugarcoat anything, which I appreciate. I don't like things being sugarcoated. I want to know what's going on, what might happen later. You know, I need to know. I feel more comfortable knowing the risks than I do having the risks hidden from me, if you know what I mean. But of anything I do. In fact, my right hand is still numb and tingly. Now, it was numb and tingly about a week before surgery because I tried to do some yard work, and I pruned some grass, some Bermuda grass I have in my front yard in a little patch. And I used a pair of scissors to cut it because it's a small patch. It's going to be 5 feet long. No, 4 feet long, about 3 feet wide. It's just this little area in front of the front step that the previous owners, when they took out the lawn and they put in a bunch of rock, they left that part as this little patch of decorative grass, I guess. But the Bermuda grass is going nuts. So I cut it with scissors, and by the time I was done cutting it with scissors, my hand was starting to go numb, and so I quit, took a break. And since then, this is, like I say, a week before surgery, my hand, my right thumb and my right forefinger, and sometimes, certain times of the day, certain days, my entire hand goes numb and tingly. To where the best I can describe it is, it's like wearing a rubber glove. I'm aware of pressure. I can feel the pressure of touching my hand, but I can't feel the texture of what's touching it. Like I can't feel the texture of my own fingers on my thumb. It's really weird. Maybe it'll go away. I suppose maybe 2-3 months from now, if it's still doing it, I may have to go see a neurosurgeon or whatever and see if I have permanent nerve damage, because nerve damage is possible with hyperparathyroidism. They say that all of the effects, all the side effects, all the symptoms will gradually go away. And I sure hope to God that my nerve damage is temporary. We'll find out, won't we? Anyway, I'll wrap this up now. Thank you for watching. And like I say on my previous videos, if you have any of the symptoms that, if you can't sleep, if you're tired and achy all the time, if all of your muscles hurt, if your skin itches, if you can't think straight, if your mind is blurry, like sometimes you can remember something and 5 minutes later you can't remember, and that keeps happening, at random seemingly, and you just feel terrible, see your doctor, go to your general practitioner, ask them to do a full blood workup, ask them to check for parathyroid hormone, PTH, and your calcium levels in your blood and urine, and see what the levels are. And if they can't imagine why you would want to do that, tell them you want to do it anyway. Insist upon it. Say, check my PTH, check my calcium in my blood and in my urine, and do it over the course. Do it for about 3 months. Do it every month for about 3 months and see where the levels are. And if they're above normal, then see if you can get him to send you to an endocrinologist for further testing, because you could have hyperparathyroidism. It's possible. No one knows what causes it. No one knows what triggers it. Nobody knows whether it's inherited or not. It's still a mystery, you know. I hope they figure it out someday. Maybe they'll even find a way to prevent it from happening. But in the meantime, have the surgery done if it needs to be done. You know, if your PTH is through the roof, if your calcium fluctuates all over the place, sometimes it's too high, sometimes it's too low, or it stays too high or stays too low, out of the normal range, you need to have the surgery. Do it. It's scary, you know. Recovering sucks. It's uncomfortable. You feel like shit, but I'm at peace with it because I know that eventually, someday, these symptoms are going to finally go completely away. I'll feel as normal as a 51-year-old. By then I'll probably be dang I bet I'll be about 51 by the time I feel as normal as I'm ever going to feel. I sure hope it happens. Thank you for watching.